My name is Mason Marangella. I build rigs for the industry's top professionals. Now, I'm teaching guitarists how to build rigs like the pros. I am the Rig Doctor.
What's up, amigos? It's the Rig Doctor, Mason Marangella here. I'm going to be taking on patch cables today. It is a question that I get asked constantly. Which cables do we use? What connectors do we use? And what is best for pedal boards? Today I'm going to give you an in-depth instruction around what materials to use and exactly how to DIY your own cables, because this is going to save you an incredible amount of money. What we're using today, Mogami cables, can range upwards of $80 to $100 for an instrument cable, and for patch cables can often be as much as $20 for a foot-long patch cable. This will allow you to make your own patch cables for cents on the dollar and be able to build an entire rig pretty much on your own, and for the things that you don't know, we'll help fill in the gaps. Feel free to ask us questions. If you want to use different cables and you're not seeing that these line up exactly, we're happy to help. Let's dive in. Today we're going to be working on some soldering, and we're going to be doing some patch cables. We've noticed there's not a lot of really excellent soldering tutorials specifically for patch cables. So today, by the end, I think you'll have a clear understanding of what might be good cable choices for you to do if you're considering DIY soldering or you're considering DIY cables. We're also going to link all of the products that we use today in the description. So if you want to buy a soldering iron like this, or you want to buy a vise like this, or you want to buy any of these connectors, this is all going to be linked for you so that you can do that yourself at home. I have a Mogami 2319, which is my favorite for patch cables. We're going to be using some wire strippers. I'm going to use two different ones, one for the outer insulator here, and then another one for the inner insulator that makes it a little easier. We're going to start with our very first one, and I'm going to use kind of the 2.6 millimeter option here. I'm just going to clip and pull. I'm going to take the copper wire and I'm going to separate it from the center conductor and braid it together. Now this is where most people make a mistake, is that there's some conductive plastic that's black right here that's around the exterior, and what you need to make sure you do is you peel all of that away completely. I'm using my fingernail right now, but you could also use your strippers for this, and I really want all of that to be gone. I don't want any solder to touch that, because that will make the cable sound really muffled like this, and it will lose all of its fidelity. So I've stripped that away. I now have the center conductor still insulated. I have the ground, which is exposed. And what I do next is I'm going to take my connector. And I have this connector right here. And this is from GLS Audio. This may not be something you'd want to use as an instrument cable connector, but for a pedal board, this is perfectly robust. And I recommend these right angle cables and these pancake cables for anybody that wants to be doing pedal board type patch cables. I'm going to undo the housing, tighten it in the vise. And I like taking my wire strippers and I squeeze down just to get the opening of these crimps for strain relief just a little bit more open, so it's easier for me to slide the cable in there. I'm trying to make sure that I have the right length for my center conductor and for my ground conductor when I go to solder. So I'm kind of pre-measuring almost visually here how long these things need to be. I probably don't need all that ground wire. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tin this, which is just a fancy way of saying I'm going to pre-solder. I'm also going to take a little bit of the insulator off so that I can solder it to this lug. So I'm going to first tin, I'm going to strip away the center insulator, tin that. I'm also going to tin the connector. I'm going to remeasure to make sure we're good, and then I'm going to solder it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to use my finer strippers here, and I'm going to go to about a 0.6 millimeter. So I just took the littlest amount off there, and I'm going to go ahead and tin it, and for that I'm going to use an additional third hand that I have here. And I've got my soldering iron to temperature. I'm just tinning it, and that just means I'm sort of pre-soldering this, and this way it allows me to have a really quick soldering point where I don't have to take a lot of time once I fuse these two ends together. I'm also going to tin the exact same parts here. I'm just going to put a little bit of solder here on the ground lug, solder the center conductor too. You could, if you wanted to, feed the center conductor through this lug, and you could wire it in that way if you wanted, but right now we're just going to do it kind of the most simple, user-friendly way. So you're just going to put some solder right there on the top. I'm sort of remeasuring here to make sure that we're about right. It looks like we could lose quite a bit of this ground wire. I'm going to cut away about 2/3 of it, because that's about all I need, and that looks about right. Just fed that guy into the center. I have a little bit of room left for the ground. I like doing the ground first because I have a little bit more room. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to heat up the solder there a little bit, get it flowing. I'm holding it in place for a few seconds just to let it set. Perfect. And on my center conductor here, I'm just going to hold
my iron right on the terminal there. We're good there. Now all I need to do is I'm going to crimp these back together. I'm just going to use my my strippers. I'm just going to really gently crimp around the cable. And I don't need to over crimp this, just enough where it's holding in place, because really the idea is that I'm reducing the strain if there's a pull, and we're good. If you wanted to apply heat shrink at this point, that could be something that you could do. It's not a necessity. Sometimes it helps create a little bit more rigidity so there's not as much moving in the housing. But in this particular case, if I know that it's going to be on a pedal board, there's not a whole lot of benefit to it. But for extra credit, I'll show you how to do it. I'm going to go in, I'm going to grab some heat shrink here. I'm going to use the housing as sort of my measuring tool so that I have just a little bit of the black heat shrink sticking out of the bottom. You want to make sure that you do this before you connect the other side of it. So I've kind of got it just gone right up to the threading here. Got my heat gun, and I like using paper embossing guns for this. And I do that because they are a little more forgiving. It's hard to kill your cable. But I like this because I can be aggressive with my heat shrinking and not have to worry about any consequences of overheating. And I just like to keep it moving. That's how you really make sure that you get a nice adhesion, not too much heat in one place. That looks about right. Now I got my housing, put that back together, screw it on. I got just kind of a little peek of that heat shrink coming through the other side. Again, not necessary. So that's side one. We're totally done with this.
Now hold up. One thing that I was pointed out as soon as I started editing this video is that I only showed one type of cable connection, which was a right angle connector, which is pretty much the same as how you would solder a straight connector. But I didn't show you how to do one of these, a pancake connector. And a lot of people prefer using these over right angle cable because they take up less space on a pedal board. So I'm going to show you how to do one of these really quickly. I'm in the exact same place that I was in when I was assembling the right angle cable. I want to show you. So I have my shield tinned, I have my center conductor tinned. Now I'm going to show you how I do it on the connector side. I've already got this guy tinned. I got the center conductor tinned, I have the shield tinned. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tin the center conductor and the ground lug right here. Just holding it on there for a second. 1 1000, 2 1000, 1 1000, 2 1000. Again, I have my soldering iron at about 800 degrees Fahrenheit. I've already got this guy tinned. I'm going to pre-measure this just to make sure I can still reach my center conductor, but I can also get that ground right there. And I'm noticing already, just like on the right angle one, I have way more of the ground than I need, so I'm going to cut away about 50% of that, which is about a ½ inch. And measure one more time to make sure that I'm good. And one thing you can do with these is you can sort of pre-bend them so that when they are sitting on the connector, they're exactly where they need to be. Perfect. Now, I did say that heat shrink generally was not advisable to use or not a benefit to use, but in this case there is, because you can see that there's a lot of lateral movement inside of this housing. So what I'm going to do is I've cut 2 pieces of heat shrink. I'm cut about 1 inch. And I'm just going to let a little bit of it stick out of the housing, but really it's just to create rigidity. It's not to help protect anything internally. First piece done, we'll go to the second piece. We got a nice thick heat shrink there. I'm going to put on the housing. That's really going to help hold it together. You can see this is a pretty thick piece of heat shrink, but the benefit is that there's literally 0 lateral movement in the housing, so this makes it a little bit more stable. I would recommend doing this if you have a thinner cable like a 2319 like this, but if you have a thicker cable like a 2524, which is the larger version of this, you may not need to use any heat shrink, and if anything, maybe just 1 piece. So there you have it. Hopefully by the end of this, you've learned some basic soldering skills, and this is something that you'll be able to apply. If you have any questions, please put those in the comments below. Please like, please subscribe, and if you didn't like it, still like and subscribe. Booyah.